looking for Frida Kahlo. I'm not sure if she's in here. I looked under K and she's not there. And I think that I'm spelling it correctly. I'm going to double check the F. But I stumbled on Free Will, so I'm definitely going to read that. There are no pictures for Free Will. I'm in volume 10. On the front cover, there's a big picture of some shells, so I will include that. Left top to bottom, whelk, Wenteltrap, volute, middle, horse, conch, tree snail, scorpion shell snail, sundial, cowrie, right, cone shell, fighting conch, crown conch. So I will include those. And here we go. Here's what the book has to say about free will, and there's quite a bit here, which is interesting. Free will, the power or ability of the human mind to choose a course of action or make a decision without being subject to restraints imposed either by antecedent causes, by necessity, or by divine predetermination. A completely free-willed act is itself a cause and not an effect. It is beyond causal sequence or law of causality. The question of man's ability to determine his actions is important in philosophy, particularly in metaphysics, ethics, and theology. Generally, the extreme doctrine affirming freedom of the will is termed libertarianism. Its opposite, determinism, maintains that human action is not willed freely, but is rather the result of such causal factors as passions, desires, physical conditions, and external circumstances beyond the control of the individual. Freedom of the will has necessarily been a concern of metaphysicians who attempt to formulate theories explaining the nature of ultimate, universal reality and man's relationship to his universe. Some metaphysicians hold that if the universe is rational, it must be based on a sequence of cause and effect. Every action or effect must be preceded by a cause and must form a part of the unbroken chain of causation extending back to the first cause, God or the divine. An act of absolute free will on the part of man or animal is, however, an uncaused act outside the causal chain. To accept the possibility of an uncaused act negates such divine rational order and makes the universe seem irrational. Viewed in this manner, this question has never been satisfactorily resolved. During the Middle Ages, the inexplicability of free will led to intense argument among religious philosophers and to the famous dilemma known as, I'm going to spell this because I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Buridan''S, ass. So sort of like burden, but there's an I in the middle. That's interesting, isn't it? Burden with an I in the middle. The validity of free will has also been a subject of considerable debate among ethical philosophers. A system of ethics must imply free will, for the denial of the ability to choose a course of action seems to negate the possibility of moral judgment. In an attempt to resolve this problem, ethical philosophers have taken a great variety of positions, ranging from absolute determinism to absolute libertarianism. Plato and Socrates maintained that men could will their own actions, but they held that only those actions were truly free which were in accord with the good or harmony of the whole. Thus, only a wise action is free. Baruch Spinoza reinterpreted free will as self-determination, that is, insofar as man fits into God's and the world's own nature. Immanuel Kant believed that man must be free, since freedom is a necessary postulate of the moral consciousness. The Kantian categorical imperative is beyond any theoretical analysis. The prevailing philosophical opinion has been that of partial self-determination, holding that although many factors other than will must be taken into account in forming moral judgments, there remains a core, however small, of creative decision in certain circumstances. See ethics. In theology, the problem of free will is of utmost importance. One of the fundamental tenets of traditional Christian theology is that God is omniscient and omnipotent, and that every human action is foreordained by Him. The doctrine of predestination, theological counterpart of determinism, seemingly precludes the existence of free will. Since morality, duty, and the avoidance of sin are also basic elements in Christian teaching, how, it is asked, can man be morally responsible once predestination is accepted? Many attempts have been made by theologians to explain this paradox. St. Augustine firmly believed in predestination, holding that only those elected by God would attain salvation. No one, however, knows who is among the elect, and therefore all should lead God-fearing religious lives. Freedom for him was the gift of divine grace. This doctrine was opposed by Pelagius, Pelagius, and particularly by his followers, who maintained that Adam's sin concerned only Adam and not the whole human race, that every man, although helped by divine grace to attain his own salvation, has complete freedom of the will to choose or reject the way to God. Eventually, Catholic theologians stated the doctrine of prevenient grace, I'm not sure how to say that, to explain free will. According to this doctrine, God bestows the grace on man to will himself into a state of grace. See grace. During the Reformation, the question of free will became a religious battleground. Many Protestant sects, notably the Calvinists, emphasized the Augustinian doctrine of predestination and the complete exclusion of free will. Calvinistic predestination was considered a paramount heresy by the Catholic Church and the Council of Trent. See Trent Council of, in the 16th century, condemned all who denied free will. Still, the problem was not resolved. The French Roman Catholic prelate Jacques Benet Bossuet, Bossuet, offered still another approach, which became widely held, by stating that free will and divine foreknowledge were certain truths which must be accepted even though there is no logical connection between them. In modern times, many psychologists have found it difficult to explain free will, since their method of scientific causality predicates its non-existence. The rational philosophers of the 17th and 18th centuries, who were in a sense psychologists, attempted to state mechanistic laws which would include mental phenomena as they did physical phenomena, such as gravity, free will, being anachronistic by definition, could not be patterned into law. Certain recent schools of psychologists have, however, recognized a factor of spontaneity in the human mind which is admitted to lie outside any possible scientific law. This spontaneity can be interpreted to be free will, or at least a measure of self-determination, which men feel themselves to possess and by which they make moral judgments. See Arminianism, Fatalism, Sin and Will. And there you go. That's what it has to say about free will. That's page 3457 and 3458. I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for listening. Sincerest Kimba.